The massive ships appeared in Earth's sky without warning, air crystal surfaces gleaming like jewels against the darkness of space. Each vessel was the size of a small city, hanging motionless above the world's major population centers. People everywhere stopped what they were doing and stared upward, their daily routines forgotten in the face of something impossible. In Seoul, Dr. Kim Jina rushed through the corridors of the University Observatory, her coffee spilling as she ran. Readings on her instruments made no sense. These objects had been traveling faster than light just hours ago, and now they sat perfectly still above Earth like they owned the place. Professor Park Minho, she called out, bursting into his office. "You need to see this right now." The elderly professor looked up from his papers, annoyed at being interrupted. But when he saw the fear in his student's eyes, he followed her without question. Together they stared at the screens, showing impossible energy readings and metal compositions. That didn't exist in any textbook. Across the globe, similar scenes played out. Military bases went to high alert. Government leaders were pulled from meetings and rushed to secure bunkers. Ordinary people stood in streets and parking lots, pointing at the sky and taking pictures with their phones. Then, at exactly noon Greenwich, meantime, every electronic device on Earth activated simultaneously. Television screens flickered to life in empty rooms. Radio stations fell silent, then began broadcasting the same signal. Computer monitors glowed with an image that made viewers step back in shock. Even phones that had been turned off suddenly blazed with light. The being that appeared on every screen was clearly not human. It stood nearly 3 meters tall, with skin that seemed to be made of living metal. Its eyes were pools of liquid silver, and when it moved, the air around it shimmered with energy. Behind it, others of its kind stood in perfect formation, there, faces showing the same expression of absolute certainty. "Primitives of Earth," the creature spoke, and somehow every person on the planet heard the words in their own language. "I am Admiral Kexmore of the Thixan Empire. You are now subjects of our rule." The Admiral's voice carried no emotion, as if he were simply stating a fact as obvious as the color of the sky. "We have observed your species for some time. Have just discovered how to split atoms and send crude signals through space. You fight wars over resources that are common throughout the galaxy. You poison your own world and argue about whether this is happening." He paused, letting his words sink in. Around the world, billions of people stood frozen, hardly breathing. "We are your superiors in every way that matters. Our technology is beyond your understanding. Our lifespans are measured in millennia, not decades. We have conquered 43 worlds and added their populations to our empire. You will be the 44th. In the Seoul Observatory, Dr. Kim Jina grabbed Professor Park's arm. "This can't be real," she whispered. "This has to be some kind of hoax." But the energy readings were undeniable. The ships above them were generating power levels that should have been impossible. Whatever these beings were, they possessed technology that made Earth's greatest achievements look like children's toys. "You have 24 of your rotations to surrender," Admiral Kexmore continued. "All military forces will lay down their weapons. All governments will transfer authority to Thixan administrators. All resistance will be met with immediate elimination." The Admiral's image leaned forward slightly, and for the first time, something that might have been amusement crossed his features. "Do not consider fighting us. Your weapons cannot harm our ships. Your fastest aircraft move like insects compared to our vessels. Your nuclear weapons are crude explosives that our shields can absorb without effort." Behind him, the other Thixans remained motionless, their silver eyes reflecting the light like mirrors. They didn't seem worried or tense. They looked bored, as if this entire process was just another routine task they had performed countless times before. "We do not wish to cause unnecessary destruction," the Admiral said. "Comply with our demands, and your lives will continue much as they have. You will work for the glory of the Thixan Empire instead of your petty nations. Your resources will serve a higher purpose. Your children will learn to worship us as the gods we are." In a military bunker deep beneath Seoul, General Lee Day watched the broadcast with growing anger. Round him, his staff sat in stunned silence, their faces pale with shock. But the general's expression was different. Where others saw fear, he felt rage building in his chest. "Gods," he muttered, spitting the word like a curse. On the screen, Admiral Kexmore spread his arms wide. "This is not a negotiation. This is not a request. This is a statement of fact. You belong to us now. Accept this truth, and your transition to proper civilization will be swift and painless." The transmission ended as suddenly as it had begun. Every screen went dark, every radio fell silent. The world was left in stunned quiet, with only the impossible ships hanging in the sky as proof that the last few minutes had actually happened. But in that silence, something else was beginning. In laboratories and military bases and university offices and government bunkers, humans were starting to do what they had always done when faced with impossible odds. They were starting to get angry. The Thixan soldiers expected to find humans cowering in their homes, begging for mercy. Instead, they found empty streets and islands that made their advanced sensors twitch with warnings they didn't understand. Captain Zekthar led his patrol through downtown Seoul, his energy weapon ready, and the humans had evacuated the area. But something felt wrong. His thermal scanners showed no life signs, yet every instinct told him they were being watched. "Sir," one of his warriors reported, "the underground tunnels show recent activity, fresh air circulation, new construction." Zekthar nodded. "Investigate. These primitives probably think they can hide underground." The explosion came from below. Without warning, the street simply disappeared in a ball of fire and smoke. 3 Thixan warriors vanished instantly, their advanced armor useless, against several tons of industrial explosives that had been packed into the subway system, in a hidden command center 10 blocks away. Sergeant Choi Hanna watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. "First blood goes to us," she radioed to her scattered teams across the city. "Execute Pattern 7. The pattern was beautiful in its simplicity. Every major building in the area had been rigged with explosives. Not enough to bring them down, but enough to channel the Thixan patrols into specific routes that led to more traps. Across the world, similar scenes played out. In New York, construction workers had discovered that their hydraulic equipment could launch steel rods with enough force to punch through Thixan armor. In Tokyo, electronics engineers found that modified microwave emitters could overload alien sensors, leaving the invaders blind and confused. Dr. Kim Jina worked frantically in her underground laboratory, surrounded by fragments of Thixan technology. Recovered from the Seoul attack, her team had been examining the alien materials for 72 hours straight, surviving on coffee and determination. "Their metal is incredible," she reported to General Lee Day over a secure video link. "Look at this power coupling. It's designed for maximum efficiency, not durability." She held up a piece of twisted alien circuitry. One specific frequency pulse, and their entire power grid cascades into failure. They've never had to design against desperate people with nothing to lose. General Lee Day leaned forward on the screen. "What are you saying, Doctor?" "I'm saying they build their technology for overwhelming superiority. They've never faced an enemy crazy enough to turn everything into a weapon. Their shields can stop nuclear missiles, but they can't handle a modified car battery wired to a microwave oven." Meanwhile, aboard the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Kexmore stared at casualty reports that made no sense. 17 warriors lost in the first day, more than he had lost conquering entire star systems. "Explain this to me," he demanded of Commander Veltar. "How are these primitives killing our forces?" Veltar shifted uncomfortably. For centuries of service, he had never seen anything like the reports coming from Earth. "Sir, they don't follow standard combat protocols. They use crude explosives, modified civilian equipment, and..." He paused, struggling with words. "They show no regard for their own survival." "What do you mean?" 3 humans detonated explosives while standing next to our warriors. They killed themselves to eliminate 2 of our soldiers. It's tactically impossible, sir. No rational species sacrifices itself for such small gains." Kexmore felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries of conquest: confusion. Every species they had encountered followed predictable patterns. They fought until overwhelmed, then surrendered. These humans seemed to get more dangerous the more hopeless their situation became. Back on Earth, the resistance was evolving faster than anyone had thought possible. Park Woo-jin, a 20-year-old computer science student, had made a discovery that changed everything. "I'm inside their communication system," he announced to his team of university friends, crammed into a basement server room. "Their security is incredibly advanced, but they never considered that someone might attack them using pure mathematical brute force. The Thixan networks had been designed to resist sophisticated cyber attacks from other advanced civilizations. They had never considered that primitives might simply try every possible combination until something worked. Within hours, Thixan coordination began breaking down. False orders flooded their networks. Supply ships received commands to attack their own bases. Patrol schedules became chaos, as conflicting instructions arrived every few minutes. "Sir Commander Veltar reported to Admiral Kexmore, our communication network is compromised. Someone is feeding false data into our tactical systems." "Impossible. Our encryption is quantum-based. These primitives don't even understand basic quantum mechanics." "Nevertheless, sir, half our ground forces are reporting conflicting orders. Some units have fired on each other believing they were attacking human resistance fighters." In the Seoul Underground, Dr. Kim Jina had achieved what should have been impossible. Using scavenged Thixan power cores and human fusion technology, her team had created hybrid weapons that matched alien energy output. "We call it Project Prometheus," she explained to an emergency meeting of world leaders conducted through secure video links. "By combining their power systems with our technology, we've created something they never expected, weapons that use their own energy against them." The first test came 3 days later. A modified satellite, hastily equipped with Gina's hybrid weapon system, faced a Thixan patrol ship above the Pacific Ocean. The alien vessel simply ceased to exist. Admiral Kexmore watched the tactical display in disbelief as one of his ships vanished from sensors. No debris, no distress signal, just empty space where a heavy cruiser had been moments before. For the first time in Thixan history, the gods were learning what it felt like to be mortal. 6 months after the invasion began, Admiral Kexmore stood before the High Council via quantum link, his image flickering with interference that human hackers had introduced into their networks. The assembled Thixan leadership stared at him with expressions of growing anger and disbelief. "Quest reinforcements," Kexmore said, the words tasting like poison in his mouth. In 4 centuries of conquest, he had never needed to ask for help. "Hi." Regent Tixnell leaned forward, explained how primitives with crude technology have resisted the might of the Thixan Empire for half a rotation cycle. Kexmore struggled to find words that wouldn't sound like madness. "These humans don't follow any logical pattern of warfare. They turn their civilian infrastructure into weapons. They sacrifice themselves tactically. They somehow improve our own technology faster than our engineers can understand it."
On Earth.
The impossible was happening daily. Dr. Kim Jina had converted 17 research facilities across 6 continents into weapons factories that produced technology the Thixans couldn't comprehend. Her laboratories didn't just copy alien systems, they made them better. "Look at this," she said to her international team during their daily video conference. She held up a modified Thixan power core that hummed with dangerous energy. "There. Design is perfect for efficiency, but we don't need efficiency. We need maximum output." Dr. Schmidt from the European facility raised his hand. "Won't that make it unstable?" Gina smiled coldly. "That's exactly what we want. You're not building power sources. We're building bombs that happen to generate electricity while they're warming up." Above Earth's atmosphere, Captain S.E.O. Hain commanded the first human vessel capable of matching Thixan ships in direct combat. EOS determination had been a simple space station 6 months ago. Now it bristled with weapons that violated every principle of physics the aliens understood. "Target acquired," reported Lieutenant Park Jin from the weapons station. "Thixan heavy cruiser, bearing 27 Mark IV. "Fire the quantum torpedo," C.O. Hain ordered. The weapon that streaked toward the alien ship existed nowhere in Thixan. Tactical databases. It had been designed by humans who didn't know such things were supposed to be impossible. The torpedo punched through the cruiser's shields and armor as if they were made of paper. The Thixan ship didn't explode. It simply stopped existing. Its matter scattered across several dimensions simultaneously. On the planet's surface, Sergeant Choi Hanna had transformed the ruins of Busan into something that gave Thixan commanders nightmares. The humans controlled every building, every street corner, every sewer tunnel. What had once been a city was now a three-dimensional maze of death traps. Movement detected. Private Min-tae reported through the comm system. Thixan patrol entering Sector 7. Hannah checked her tactical display. Sector 7 was perfect. Initiate Labyrinth Protocol. Let them come deeper. The 6 Thixan warriors entered what their sensors told them was an abandoned shopping district. Instead, they found themselves in a carefully constructed kill zone where every surface had been rigged with motion sensors and every building had been turned into a weapon. The first warrior triggered a pressure plate. It brought down a section of ceiling. The second stepped into a pit filled with modified Thixan energy cells that exploded on contact. Remaining 4 tried to retreat, only to discover that the entrance they had used no longer existed. The battle lasted exactly 3 minutes. No Thixan survived. Young Park Woojin had achieved something that military experts said was impossible. From his hidden command center, he had convinced the Thixan fleet's central computer that they were fighting other Thixans instead of humans. Upload complete, he announced to his team of teenage hackers. Their identification systems are now marking their own ships as hostile targets. In space above Earth, the Thixan fleet began destroying itself. Ship after ship fired on its neighbors, convinced by falsified computer data that they were under attack by enemy vessels. Admiral Kexmore watched his perfect formation collapse into chaos as his own forces tore each other apart, but the humans weren't finished. Dr. Kim. Gina's latest creation was her masterpiece of spite and innovation. She had taken Earth's orbital debris field, millions of pieces of space junk that had been cluttering the planet's orbit for decades, and turned it into the largest weapon system ever conceived. Every piece of debris now has guidance systems and propulsion. She explained to General Lee Day during their secure video call, "We've essentially turned our garbage into a million-piece artillery system. How do we control them all?" the general asked. "We don't. They're programmed to target anything with a Thixan energy signature. Fire and forget on a planetary scale." The attack began at dawn. Millions of pieces of transformed space junk, old satellites, discarded rocket stages, fragments of destroyed stations all accelerated simultaneously toward the Thixan fleet. Each piece hit with the force of a nuclear weapon, but there were so many that alien point defenses couldn't possibly track them all. Admiral Kexmore stood on his bridge, watching his fleet burn around him as impossible weapons struck from every direction. His perfect technology, his superior firepower, his divine mandate, none of it mattered. Against enemies who refused to acknowledge they were supposed to lose, for the first time in Thixan history, gods were learning what it meant to fear mortals. Admiral Kexmore stood alone in his command chamber, staring at reports that made no sense. 18% of his fleet was gone, destroyed not by superior technology or overwhelming force, but by primitives who seemed to treat impossible odds as a personal challenge. The latest intelligence briefing lay on his desk like an accusation. Humans had somehow captured 3 destroyers intact. Worse, they were operating them better than Thixan crews could. A species that had discovered spaceflight only decades ago was now outmaneuvering warriors with centuries of experience. Sir Commander Veltar entered the chamber, his silver skin pale with stress. "We've lost contact with the ground forces. In Tokyo, all 30 warriors in that sector have gone silent." Kexmore closed his eyes. "How?" "Unknown, sir. The last transmission showed them entering what appeared to be an abandoned office building. Then nothing." What Veltar didn't know was that the building had been a trap. Sergeant Choi Hanna and her team had spent weeks turning it into something between a maze and a slaughterhouse. Every room led to 3 more rooms. Every corridor split in impossible directions, And hidden in the walls were weapons that the Thixan sensors couldn't detect because they were made from materials that didn't exist in any alien database. The humans had learned to fight dirty in ways that no civilized species could imagine. Dr. Kim Gina sat in her laboratory, surrounded by technology that would have been impossible a year ago. Her team had stopped simply copying Thixan systems. Now they were improving them, fixing design flaws that the aliens had never noticed because they had never faced desperate innovation. The problem with their ships, she explained to her exhausted research team, is that they're built for efficiency. An overwhelming force? It never considered that someone might try to make their own technology work backwards. She held up a device that looked like a combination of human electronics and alien crystals. This little beauty convinces their shields that friendly fire is coming from inside the ship. Own defensive systems tear them apart from within. Captain Seo Heian commanded humanity's first faster-than-light warship, the Soul Vengeance. Built from captured Thixan technology and human innovation, it should have been impossible. The alien components fought against human modifications at every turn, but somehow her engineers had made it work. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Park Jin reported from his station, "we've successfully infiltrated their supply convoy. They think we're one of their escort ships." Suhan smiled grimly. "Excellent. Begin Operation Pandora." The operation was elegant in its simplicity. Human programmers had created a computer virus specifically designed for Thixan systems. Unlike human viruses that tried to hide, this one announced itself proudly. It told every ship it infected that all other ships in the fleet were enemies that needed to be destroyed immediately. Within an hour, the Thixan supply convoy was burning wreckage floating in space, destroyed by their own escort vessels. On Earth, the war had changed completely. Humans no longer hid from Thixan patrols, they hunted them. Young Park Woo-jin had developed a tracking system that used the aliens' own communication networks against them. Every time a Thixan warrior activated his equipment, human resistance fighters knew exactly where he was. Contact Private Minte whispered into his cum as he watched a group of alien soldiers through his rifle scope. For gods entering the temple. The temple was what humans called their kill zones now. Areas so thoroughly trapped and monitored that no Thixan who entered ever came out alive. This particular temple had been a shopping mall. It was a three-dimensional puzzle of death that the Resistance had designed specifically for overconfident aliens. The Thixan patrol entered confidently, their sensors telling them the building was empty. They never noticed the human-designed materials that their equipment couldn't detect. They never saw the weapons built from their own technology turned inside out. 15 minutes later, Sergeant Choi Hanna's team was salvaging equipment from 4 dead Thixans and planning their next hunt. Admiral Kexmore received the casualty reports in his private chambers, away from his staff, who were already beginning to whisper about failure and impossibility. 143 warriors lost. In a single day, elite soldiers who had conquered worlds were being systematically eliminated by beings that dismissed as barely evolved animals. The humans had done something no other species in Thixan history had managed. They had stopped being prey and become predators. Young Park Woo-jin achieved his greatest victory in a basement server room, surrounded by empty coffee cups and the smell of overheated electronics. After months of patient work, he had finally cracked the quantum encryption protecting Admiral Kexmore's personal files. "I'm inside their flagship's main computer," he announced to the Global Resistance Network. "Everything. Tactical databases, personal communications, fleet positions, even their home coordinates." Dr. Kim Gina leaned forward on the video call. "Their home system, complete star charts, defense layouts, population centers?" Woo-jin's young face was grim with purpose. "They wanted to conquer us. I think it's time we returned the favor." Okay. The hunters had become the hunted, and humanity was preparing to take the fight directly to the gods themselves. For the first time in their long history, the Thixan Empire was about to learn what it felt like to be on the receiving end of an invasion. The final battle began not with explosions or laser fire, but with a simple upload. Park Woo-jin sat in his basement command center, his fingers dancing across keyboards that controlled the fate of an empire. Around him, screens showed the Thixan fleet hanging in space above Earth, still confident in their superiority. "Virus upload complete," he announced to the Global Resistance Network. "Every Thixan ship now believes all other Thixan ships are hostile enemies." Admiral Kexmore watched in horror as his perfect fleet tore itself apart. Ship after ship opened fire on its neighbors, convinced by falsified computer data that they were under attack. His formations dissolved into chaos as vessels that had fought together for centuries suddenly became mortal enemies. "Sir?" Commander Veltar shouted over the alarms filling the bridge. "Our own ships are targeting us. The computer systems show friendlies as hostiles." Kexmore stared at the tactical display where green markers had turned red across the entire fleet. "Override the targeting systems. We can't, sir. The virus has locked us out of our own computers." In space around Earth, Captain Essio Heian commanded the human fleet that shouldn't have existed. Converted civilian ships flew alongside captured alien vessels and hybrid constructions that defied every law of engineering. Her voice carried across all frequencies as she gave the order that would end the war. "All ships, this is sole vengeance. Today, we finish this. Today we show the galaxy that gods can die." The human attack was unlike anything in military history. They didn't use formation tactics or strategic doctrine. They fought with the desperate creativity that had kept them alive for 18 months against impossible odds. Dr. Kim Jina's final weapon was a masterpiece of human spite. She had converted Earth's entire orbital debris field into a kinetic weapon system. Millions of pieces of space junk, each guided by hybrid human Thixan technology, accelerated toward the alien fleet like angry metal hornets. "Fire everything," General Li Day ordered from the Global Command Center. The debris storm hit the Thixan fleet with overwhelming force. Each piece struck with nuclear-level energy, but there were so many that alien point defenses couldn't track them all. Ships that had survived battles across the galaxy were torn apart by modified garbage powered by their own technology. Admiral Kexmore made his final, desperate move. He activated his flagship's self-destruct sequence and aimed the Eternal Dominion directly at Earth's surface. If he was going to die, he would take the human homeworld with him. He never reached the atmosphere. Sergeant Choi Hanna led a boarding party of volunteers who had infiltrated the flagship using captured Thixan stealth technology. Her team moved through the alien ship like ghosts, turning the invaders' own systems against them. Every corridor they passed became a death trap for Thixan defenders. "Bridge secured," she reported over her comm as her squad surrounded the towering figure of Admiral Kexmore. The alien leader stood alone, his silver skin pale with defeat. His perfect technology, useless against humans who refused to fight fair. Kexmore looked down at the small human soldier who had somehow boarded his invincible ship. His voice filled with genuine confusion. "You are primitives. We are gods." Hannah smiled grimly, her weapon trained on the being who had tried to enslave her world. "That was your first mistake. Gods don't expect mortals to fight back." She pulled the trigger. The death of Admiral Kexmore marked more than the end of the invasion. It marked the end of Thixan supremacy in the galaxy. Across space, other species who had suffered under alien rule began receiving broadcasts from Earth. Humans didn't just offer sympathy, they offered weapons, tactics, and the revolutionary idea that gods could be killed. 6 months after the last Thixan ship had burned in Earth's orbit, Dr. Kim Jina stood on the bridge of the Soul Vengeance. As it dropped out of faster-than-light travel above the Thixan homeworld, behind her ship, a fleet of human vessels built from the wreckage of their former oppressors hung in space like avenging angels. "Open a channel to the planetary government," she ordered. "Channel open, Doctor," Lieutenant Park Jin reported. Voice carried across space to the alien world that had sent death to Earth. "Thixan, High Council. This is Dr. Kim Jina representing the United Earth Defense Force. Your Admiral Kexmore called us primitives. Your empire claimed divine authority over lesser species." She paused, looking out at the blue-green world below. Somewhere on that planet, the beings who had tried to enslave humanity were realizing that their victims had become their conquerors. "We're here to discuss the terms of your surrender," Gina continued, her voice calm and professional.
Oh.
"You will dismantle your military forces, You'll release all enslaved populations. You will provide reparations to every species you have conquered. The silence from the planet below stretched for long minutes. And if you refuse, Gina added, her tone never changing, we'll show you exactly how primitives deal with false gods. The Thixan Empire, which had ruled the galaxy for over 1,000 years, surrendered unconditionally within the hour. Humanity had risen from a barely spacefaring species to the galaxy's newest apex predators in less than 2 years. They had proven that gods were just mortals who had never met anyone willing to call their bluff. The age of easy conquest was over. The age of humanity had begun.